5 things we learned in the Champions League this week. We have to start off with Arsenal's 0-0 result against Atalanta, going away from home, particularly after such a grueling North London derby, and with Man City coming up. That is a very, very decent 0-0 result, particularly in the new Champions League format. We'll talk about that in a minute. But going away to Italy, going away to a side with European pedigree, winning a serious trophy last season in the Europa League. Atalanta are a serious side. Yes, they probably don't have world beaters in the same way that Arsenal do, Premier League sides have these days. Of course not. But if they lose that game going into the Man City game, particularly with the timing of it as well, I thought Thursday, I don't know who's doing the scheduling. I think it's an absolute embarrassment that Arsenal have to go from Thursday to Sunday against Man City after North London derby. If there's Tuesday and Wednesday fixtures available like there were for other clubs, I don't know why they're playing on Thursday, but it was tricky and they got through it. And this Arsenal side are showing defensive maturity. They're showing defensive ruggedness that obviously we never really saw with Unai Emery. We never really saw with Arsene Wenger. And it's only the second kind of season where we can see a sample size of what Arteta's trying to do in Europe. And the first season wasn't a fluke. The first season, Arsenal were fantastic in defence in Europe as well as the Premier League. They carried their Premier League defensive form, particularly their away form, into Europe. And they've done that again today. Last night, 0-0 is a very good result. Ultimately, it doesn't mean much because there's so many other games now that Arsenal can play, particularly with the games coming up at home. You look at PSG coming up. I think they'll batter them at home. I really do. I think it's just a whole different level, the Premier League, particularly the Emirates, bit of a fortress now. Again, in European fixtures, Shakhtar Donetsk, and then Monaco and Dinamo Zagreb towards the new year as well. So I think Arsenal put themselves in a very, very strong position, and it's all down to their defensive strength. David Raya has gone from a keeper, I think he's playing for Southport about 8 or 9 years ago, played through the Championship, and now he's a Champions League level keeper, one of the best in the world. We can debate if he's the best. I don't think he is, of course, but there will be debates if he keeps putting up these kind of numbers and clean sheets and forms and big saves, penalty saves and a rebound save. In Europe, he's going to get noticed massively. He's a very, very good shot stopper. I saw it, I'm going to be completely honest, lads. I saw it from day dot when he came in and people were saying Ramsdale should be getting rotated in and out every other game. Absolute shambles. David Raya is a good keeper, fantastic at Brentford, and now he's at the level where he deserves to be. And when you look at Alisson potentially going to Saudi Arabia or Edison in the next couple of years, they're in their 30s. David Raya really is in the next kind of echelon of young keepers coming up who will take that position forward, in my opinion. Very, very good keeper and creates this kind of spine where Arsenal can go away from home, tricky fixture and get a 0-0. The second thing we've learned from the Champions League this week is the league format is completely different. I think it completely has changed expectations on sides. Inter Milan, really in the group stages against Man City, if it was a couple of years ago, really would a 0-0 would be a decent result, and I think a win would be an outrageously good result. And now I think the league has flattened things a little bit, and I don't think sides need to be going out and getting wins early. They can just sit there. I think there'll be a lot of sides. You look at the likes of Celtic and those kind of lower level European sides, Bratislava, a few other sides. They'll be thinking, can we hang in there against big sides? Can we wait till January? Stay in Europe till January? Try and get 4, 6, 7 points. That could be enough to keep you in Europe and keep a lot of managers in their jobs, keep a lot of kind of revenue coming in for these clubs. And that means when I think the likes of Man City, Arsenal and Inter Milan will play each other, I think that's going to be very similar as well. I think there's going to be a lot more of a flat kind of draw vibe going on. A lot more results are going to be based on draws and trying to keep in the competition. And I don't know if that's good or bad. It's still early. I don't want to be pessimistic or negative in this video, but it does feel to me like there's more football matches and a touch less excitement. If Inter Milan had gone to the Etihad this week and won, City really have to win the next game. You can't lose 2 games in a row in the Champions League. Now, let's just say City had lost to Inter Milan. Obviously, they had some fantastic chances. Then suddenly you're looking at it and thinking, actually, City can probably draw a couple more games now, even lose a game. I'm not saying that will happen, and stay in the competition and just keep floating through the competition. And I think this league sets up the option of more of the big clubs just always staying in the league, always staying in the Champions League all the way till January. If you look at Man United last season, they crashed out really, really early. This format, I think, supports dead big football clubs, keeps them going, keeps them alive, like Frankenstein's monster, keeps them in the competition, and provides that kind of safety blanket in terms of 2/3 now. 2/3 of sides stay into the competition knockout stages, whereas before it was only one half of every 4-team group stage pot, if that makes sense. So yeah, the competition I think has made it a slightly less exciting in the early stages, but remains to be seen. We have to talk about Man City. I've not talked about Man City's 0-0 result on the channel yet. It was a decent result, to be honest with you. I think the clean sheets have been few and far between for Man City. If you count the back end of last season as well, there were quite many goals going in. Obviously, goals in the FA Cup final, right at the back end of the Premier League campaign as well. So I think City have to rely and lean on the defensive security of Ederson, of Gvardiol, Ruben Diaz, John Stones, Rico Lewis. There has to be a back four that I think, look, this is early in the season. I still back rotation. Akanji was fantastic. But I think going into January, February, what City last season, why I think City maybe struggled a little bit against Real Madrid in terms of conceding the goals that we did, is because of that, the lack of regular back four. I'm a bit of an orthodox football fan. I think you need a regular back four going into the season. There was a little bit too much rotation at the back end of last season, in my opinion. So a 0-0 against Inter Milan rode our luck a bit like the final in Istanbul. And there we go. It's a massive compliment to Man City that the two-time champions of Italy in the last 4 years. Inzaghi's an unbelievable coach. He manages them fantastically well. In his highest level of managing a Champions League game against the champions of England, he puts 8 behind the ball in a flat line. At points it was 6 in a row. So I know parking the bus can be seen as why I'm slating the opposition for doing what they have to do to stay in the game. Inter Milan don't have the quality to go toe-to-toe with Man City, but it's a massive compliment to Man City, what Man City are doing, that 3-time European winners Inter Milan rock up and park the bus. And I think it says a lot about the levels. And these football players on the pitch know full well. It's not about if you're sat there at home saying Man City aren't a big club, Man City aren't this, aren't that. I get that. But on a sporting level, these footballers are rocking up to the Etihad and they know full well they're going to get outplayed and they're nowhere near the level. And I think Inter Milan have probably got one world-class player, maybe if that. And they just know they're going to get bullied. So they sat back and they made things very, very difficult. And they lent into the fact that the Champions League format allows that a little bit as well. So that's the third thing we've learned. I think City have a defensive maturity that has to be grown into going into the remainder of this season if City want to win the Champions League. I think that's the big one this season. 5 in a row and all these big numbers for me aren't as exciting as I think just trying to get more European history and European pedigree because it's so special winning the Champions League. We have to talk about Real Madrid. It was such an unbelievable performance. And for me, you just have to talk about the quality that they had on display. Endrick obviously scored a fantastic goal. Keeper should do a lot better. But the fact that Endrick can come in, I think for a lot of the Real Madrid sides we've seen in the last couple of years, I think he'd be starting. And he's not even starting these games. Mbappe, Rodrigo, Vinicius. If you can limit them, that's the big question. And I don't know if 95% of the sides can. If they come up against Man City again, and that's the big thing for me. This season's Champions League, whilst Guardiola and Ancelotti are there, the final, I pray to God the final was City-Real Madrid, if we're lucky enough to get to the final. Because I think both sides are at the upper echelons of where world football has to be. One's got these icons, one's got the pedigree, the history, and the other is a sporting, philosophical project that I think is on the highest plane of modern football. I really do. The way City play football is outstanding. I just hope it's the final because the talent that we saw from Real Madrid, Endrick's goal, so reminiscent of Brazilian footballers. I know he took it early. I know the keeper should do better. But the way he just kind of punched it in, it was just so exciting. It reminded me a little bit of those Ronaldinho finishes, a little bit of maybe Kaká's finishes. Brazilian football for me, I know it's about skill and flair and dribbling and stuff like that. But sometimes, if you look at the top legends, Rivaldo, Romario, their finishing ability is they shoot so early, they shoot first time, they shoot from weird angles and weird positions, and they always just squeeze it in. And that's another facet of Brazilian football I think we're missing a little bit. And Endrick is carrying the torch. What a talent Endrick is. And then we have to wrap up with Liverpool, which was 72 hours ago, thinking about an AC Milan side that are nowhere near the level, but two massive sides with pedigree in European football. And Liverpool just looked a cut above. And I really do think that I actually think if they play Bayern Munich, they beat Bayern Munich across 2 legs in the knockout stages. So that means that with European history on Liverpool's side, Anfield under the lights, I think they've got a special position in this competition of slight underdogs, but with the experience of players that have won the Champions League, which is so important. Look at Real Madrid, the amount of times they've done it based on just kind of compound interest of experience in the Champions League. I think Liverpool are right behind Man City. I think they're ahead of Arsenal in terms of winning it as well. Third favourites for me based on this week's action. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about the 5 things we learned in the Champions League this weekend. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you made it this far, and I'll see you very, very soon.